The air in the kitchen that night felt heavy, like it was carrying something too big for either of us to hold. She didn't speak right away. She just stood there barefoot on the cold tile, her body trembling, but not from the chill. Her arms were stiff at her sides, and in her right hand she was holding her wedding ring, gripping it so tight her knuckles were pale. I remember thinking, God, she's shaking. Not from fear. No, this was something else. It was rage. And heartbreak. All tangled up and ready to explode. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man standing across from her. Like I was a stranger, someone she hadn't invited into her life, her home, her bed. And then she threw it. That ring, our ring. It hit me right in the chest. Not hard, not violent, but it landed like a thud that echoed all the way through my ribs and down to something I didn't know could still break. She didn't scream, didn't cry. Her voice, when she finally spoke, it was this low, sharp whisper. You know what you did. But the truth is, I didn't. Not really. I mean, yeah, we were distant. Things had been quiet between us. Long silences at dinner. Cold backs in bed. We'd both felt it, but we didn't talk about it. We just existed. Together. Side by side, but never quite touching. Still, when she said those 5 words, you know what you did, all I could think about was one thing. One tiny moment that changed everything. One word. Just one. That's all I said. One word. And it tore a 15-year marriage straight down the middle like paper. You know how sometimes something so small, so casual, can carry more weight than a lifetime of love? That's what this was. I said a word. She heard a confession. And in that moment, nothing about us was the same ever again. If you've ever looked someone you loved right in the eyes and felt like you were watching them disappear. If you've ever wondered how one little moment, one choice, could flip everything upside down, then stay with me. Because this isn't about cheating. Not really. It's about what we see and what we miss. It's about the quiet things we do that break the people we love, even when we never mean to. So, if you're here for the real stuff, the raw, emotional kind of stories that don't rush the heartbeats, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Sheila Hart Tales, and let's unravel this one together. Because I need to tell you what happened after she threw that ring. And why I still hear it hit the floor every single night. The night before everything broke. Before the ring, before the silence. We were in that same kitchen. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet you don't notice until it wraps around you, soft and heavy. It was late. Maybe past midnight. No TV. No phones. Just the low hum of the fridge and the sound of her moving barefoot across the tile. She always walked light, like she didn't want to wake something sleeping deep inside the walls. She had just come out of the shower. Hair still damp, skin glowing from the heat. Wearing one of those old, faded sleep shirts, threadbare at the shoulders, but still managing to look like something out of a dream. She stood by the counter, stirring a mug of tea that she'd forget to drink. I came up behind her. Didn't say anything. Just let my hands find the curve of her waist, like they used to do without thinking. I felt her take a breath when I touched her, slow, deliberate. Not because she was surprised, but because she felt it, like maybe she hadn't expected to feel me there fully present. My palms slid around to her stomach, fingers grazing the hem of her shirt. She didn't move, didn't flinch. She just leaned back, just enough that the back of her head rested against my chest. And we stood there. No words. No urgency. Just stillness. Her breathing rising and falling, syncing with mine. Like we were trying to remember the rhythm of us. That's the thing about touch. It says things you forget how to say out loud. And that night, I wanted to say everything I'd been too distracted, too tired, too stupid to say for weeks. So I didn't talk. I just touched her. Gently. Like she was something breakable. Like maybe I already knew deep down that we were standing on the edge of something we couldn't come back from. She turned around, slow, lifted her eyes to mine. And for a second, God, just a second, it felt like we were 25 again. New. Stupid. madly in love and desperate to prove it every single second. She reached up, touched my cheek, ran her fingers through the back of my hair. She always did that when she was trying to pull me closer without saying it. And I leaned in. Not for a kiss. Not yet. I pressed my forehead to hers, breathed her in. Vanilla. Lavender. Skin. She smelled like home. My thumb brushed her lips. Not possessive. Not urgent. Just tracing. Memorizing something I thought I already knew by heart. And then, she smiled. Small. Sad. Like she was already a little bit gone, but she didn't want me to feel it just yet. I should have asked her something in that moment. Are you okay? Are we okay? But I didn't. I just let the silence hang there. Because silence felt safer than truth. We stood like that for a long time. Close, but not quite close enough. And every part of me still knew her shape. The slope of her hips, the dip of her collarbone, the way her breath caught when I got too close. But that night, it wasn't her body I felt the most. It was her silence. And if I'm honest, it scared the hell out of me. Because silence like that, that's not the kind that begs for comfort. That's the kind that whispers you're already too late. And I think, deep down, I already knew I was. She was still in my arms when she asked it. Soft. Almost like she didn't want the words to land too hard. Do you still want me? Not do you love me? Not do you need me? Just that one word. Want. And it hit different. Because love is safe. It's got structure. History. Vows. But want? That's raw. That's now. That's the thing that disappears without warning. I didn't answer right away. And that silence. That tiny pause, just a breath too long. It said more than anything I could have come up with. She stepped back just a little. Not much. But I felt it, like someone letting go of a ledge they've been holding onto too long. Why'd you pause? She asked. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even surprised. Just sad. Tired. And I wanted to lie. I wanted to say, of course I still want you. But something in me froze. Because I didn't know if I wanted her. Or if I just wanted what we used to be. So I told her the truth. A half-truth, maybe. But still, I think I miss us, I said. Before we became routine. She nodded. Eyes still locked on mine. And then she said something I'll never forget. I've had this fantasy, she whispered. I've had it for years, but I never told you. She laughed a little under her breath. Not happy, more like she was embarrassed by the sound of it. I used to imagine someone watching us, she said. Not just watching. There. Close. Touching me, with you there too. Or touching you and I'd be the one watching. I don't know. Just something different. Something alive. And she looked at me. Not to shock me. Not to provoke. She looked at me like someone who just gave away their last little secret. The kind you carry around for years, waiting for the right moment to lay it down and breathe again. I didn't say anything, not because I was judging her, not because I thought it was wrong. I just didn't know what to do with it. I stood there like a fool. Still. Quiet. Trying to make sense of the woman I thought I knew suddenly knew again. Different. And in that silence, I watched her retreat. Just a blink of an eye. But I felt it, like watching warmth slip out of a room you forgot to heat. She gave me this tiny smile. Closed lip. Protective. It's okay, she said, almost to herself. You don't have to say anything. I shouldn't have brought it up. I wanted to reach for her. To pull her back into my arms. To say, no, tell me more. I want to understand. I want to be there with you, wherever that place is. But I didn't move. I didn't speak. And that was the first crack. The first quiet, irreversible shift in the ground beneath us. Because in that moment, what she heard wasn't just silence. She heard rejection. And maybe she was right. Because maybe I was too wrapped up in my own discomfort to recognize that she wasn't confessing something dark. She was asking for connection. And I missed it. Right there in our own kitchen. Right there, in the soft jazz and the stillness and the lavender scent still clinging to her hair. I missed her. Again. You want to know the word that changed everything? Interesting. That's what I said. After she shared something raw, something tangled up in years of quiet, breathless curiosity. After she exposed a corner of herself I'd never been allowed to see before. I looked her in the eyes and said, interesting. Not tell me more. Not how did it make you feel. Not even I don't know what to say. Just that word. Like I was watching a documentary. Like I was listening to someone else's story. And the way her face changed. I'll never forget that either. It was subtle, barely there. Her eyes dropped for half a second. Her jaw tightened, just a flicker. But I felt it, like cold water poured down the back of my neck. She turned away from me then. Walked to the other side of the kitchen like she was looking for something to do with her hands. Opened the dishwasher. Closed it again. Pointless movements. And then she said it. Quiet. Controlled. But I swear her voice was shaking underneath. I kissed someone, she said. At the retreat. A few months ago. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just waited for the rest. She stood with her back to me, one hand braced against the counter like she was holding herself up. It wasn't a man, she said. And it wasn't planned. It just happened. She turned, and her eyes finally met mine. Clear. Direct. No apologies. I kissed her, she said. And I liked it. That was the part that scared me the most. I think I stopped breathing. Not because she'd cheated. Not because it was a woman. But because suddenly I realized how far away she was from me. How far she'd already gone. She must have seen the way my face dropped. Because her voice softened, even more. I didn't tell you because I wasn't ready to know what it meant. But I thought maybe when I shared the fantasy, you'd feel something. Anything. A question. A spark. Even a little jealousy. But you just said, interesting. Like I was an article you half-read on your lunch break. I wanted to defend myself. To explain that I froze, that I panicked, that I didn't know what to say. But she was already ahead of me. I didn't cheat because I was chasing some secret life. I kissed her because I felt seen. Because I felt wanted in a way I haven't in years. That's when the floor shifted. Because it wasn't just about the kiss. It wasn't just about her. It was about us. About all the nights we went to bed without touching. All the mornings we said love you like a line in a script. About every time I walked past her without really looking. And yeah, it wasn't a man. But betrayal doesn't care about gender. It only cares that you didn't know. That you were on the outside of a moment that changed someone you love, and you weren't even invited to witness it. And standing there in our kitchen, that ring still on her finger, I realized something brutal. The kiss wasn't the betrayal. The distance was. The kiss was just the proof. And now? Now there was no going back. After she said it. After she dropped that truth between us like a lit match on a trail of gasoline. I didn't say a word. She didn't expect me to. That was the part that hurt most. She didn't even look at me for a reaction. Like she'd already decided I didn't have one worth waiting for. And I stood there, heart thudding like it wanted to break out of my chest, staring at the back of the woman I married. This stranger who once knew every corner of me. My brain couldn't decide which emotion to grab onto. Denial was first. No, not her. Not like this. This was the same woman who used to leave love notes in my lunch bag. Who once cried in the shower because she thought she wasn't exciting enough for me. Who still curled into my side every night, even when we didn't speak a word. She wouldn't do this. She couldn't. And yet, she had. Then came betrayal. Sharp. Fast. Dirty. I pictured her with this woman. My wife, her mouth on someone else's neck, her fingers tangled in someone else's hair. And I couldn't breathe. I wanted to smash something. Not because she kissed someone, but because she didn't tell me. Because some stranger knew a version of her I hadn't seen in years. That's when curiosity crept in. Dark and shameful. A part of me, God help me. A part of me wondered what it looked like, what it felt like for her. Not out of some perverse fantasy, but because for the first time in forever, she was alive in her own skin. And I wasn't part of it. Did she tilt her head the way she used to with me? Did she hold her breath like she used to when I kissed just below her ear? And if she did, why not with me anymore? Then came the shame. Crushing. Cold. I started retracing every moment. Not with her. Without her. Every time I pulled away too fast. Every time I touched her out of habit instead of desire. Every time I was there but not present. I started asking myself questions I'd avoided for years. Did I stop seeing her? Not with my eyes. Not in the way you notice someone walk into a room. But the way you really see someone. The way you look and wonder. Admire. Want. Did I make her feel invisible? I thought I'd been showing up. But maybe I was just showing around. We used to talk for hours. She used to tell me stories about her childhood, her dreams, her fears. When was the last time I asked her something that wasn't about groceries or bills or picking up the dry cleaning? When was the last time I made her feel anything? And it hit me. What if this wasn't about some forbidden fantasy at all? What if she needed to be seen in a way I never learned how to look? What if I spent so long trying to hold on to what we used to be, that I forgot to fall in love with the woman she became? I'd been loyal, faithful, predictable, but I hadn't been present. And maybe loyalty isn't enough when your partner is starving for more than just stability. Maybe comfort can start to feel like a slow erasure. And maybe, just maybe, this kiss wasn't her stepping out of our marriage. It was her stepping into herself. And where did that leave me? Outside, watching the story unfold from the wrong side of the glass, trying to piece together where the cracks started, and wondering if I was too late to fix any of it. Because it's one thing to lose someone to anger, to distance, to time. But to lose someone, because you never really saw them, that's a grief you carry inside your own reflection. She packed light. Just one bag. Didn't fold anything neatly the way she usually did. Just tossed in clothes like she was escaping a fire. Didn't look back at me once while she zipped it shut. No questions. No explanations. Only this. I need the weekend, she said. No details. No location. Just that. And then she was gone. I didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't dare. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't the kind of silence you interrupt. This was the kind of silence that tells you something's shifting, and if you're smart, you give it room. The house without her felt like a song stuck between stations. Static, empty, unfinished. I couldn't sleep. Didn't eat much. Spent hours replaying everything. Not just the kiss. Not just the conversation. Everything. The way we used to be. The way we stopped being. The way she looked at me the night before she left. Like I was someone she used to love. And maybe didn't know anymore. When she came back Sunday night, it was late. Past midnight. The house was dark, but I was still up. Sitting on the edge of the bed like a kid waiting to be scolded. She walked in quietly. Set her bag down. Didn't turn on the lights. But I could still see it. Something in her was new. She moved differently. Not arrogant. Not cold. But grounded. Rooted. Like she'd spent 2 days staring in a mirror and finally liked who was looking back. Her hair was loose. Her skin had this kind of glow not from makeup or sun. From clarity. I stood up and asked, "Are we okay?" She didn't answer right away. Just looked at me. Held my gaze like she was measuring how much of me was still in there. And how much she was willing to keep. Then she said it. Voice low. Even. No rage. No tears. "This isn't just your marriage." She let the words settle. Then stepped closer. "It's mine too. And I'm not disappearing inside it anymore." That hit me harder than anything she'd said. Because she was right. All this time, I thought I was the one being left. But maybe I'd been letting her fade for years. Letting her become small so we could fit into the neat, quiet version of marriage I thought was enough. But she was done being small. Done whispering her needs. Done asking for permission to be more. And in that moment, as I watched her standing there, strong and steady and herself, I realized something that cut deep but clean. She wasn't waiting for me anymore. Not to fix it. Not to understand it. Not even to forgive it. She had decided to take up space again. To step back into the center of her own story. And whether I came with her or not wasn't entirely up to me. She kissed my cheek soft, slow. Not passion. Not pity. Good night. Then walked past me into the bathroom, closed the door, and left me standing there. Married, but suddenly unsure what that meant anymore. The text came in at 3:12 p.m. Just one line. No emojis. No punctuation. Just that same certainty in her voice that she'd had when she came back from wherever she'd gone. Be there by 8. No questions. That was it. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough for my coffee to go cold. Long enough to wonder if she sent it to the wrong person. Or worse, exactly the right one. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to. Because I didn't know how. I read it again. Be there by 8. Not can you. Not will you. Be. Like a command. Or an invitation. And no questions. That part lingered. Because I had so many. But I was starting to realize some answers only come when you stop trying to drag them out with words. So I got dressed around 6:45. Nothing dramatic, jeans, a button-up. But I stood in front of the mirror for longer than I cared to admit, adjusting my collar like it mattered. There was something about this night that didn't feel like just another conversation. Didn't even feel like reconciliation. It felt like a line drawn in soft sand. Like she was offering me a moment, and what I did with it would tell her everything. I got in the car just before 7. Turned the engine over, let it idle while I sat there with my hands on the wheel. My palms were already damp. The drive wasn't long, but it felt endless. The city rolled past my window in little pieces, neon lights flickering on, people holding hands at crosswalks, taxis honking like impatient hearts. I hit a red light 2 blocks from the address she'd sent. That's when it happened. That flicker like a reel of old film playing in the back of my mind. Our wedding vows. Not the ones the pastor gave us. Not the ones from the book. The ones we whispered to each other under our breath after the ceremony, barefoot in the grass behind the reception tent, her mascara smudged from laughing too hard, my tie half off. No matter how much we change, we find our way back. That's what she said to me. I remember brushing a strand of hair from her cheek and saying, even if we forget who we are, I'll remember for both of us. I thought I meant it. But somewhere between mortgages and migraines and dinners eaten in silence, I forgot. Forgot what it meant to see her. Forgot how to stay curious. Forgot how to make her feel like the only woman in the room when she was right there, every night, reaching for someone I'd stopped being. I gripped the wheel tighter. The light turned green. But I stayed there a second longer. Breathing. Was this a test? A punishment? A goodbye in disguise? Or was it something else? Something new. Unwritten. Whatever it was. My foot moved to the gas. I didn't look back. Just the soft voice of our past playing between stoplights and shadows. And the address glowing on my screen. 8 o'clock. No questions. Only the sound of my heart knocking against my ribs like it was about to see something it never expected. I parked down the street. The address led me to an old building, tall windows, ivy crawling up the side like time had softened its edges. It wasn't her friend's place. Not somewhere I'd ever been. The front door was unlocked. Not broken, just unlocked. Like trust. Like risk. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step sounding louder than it should have. My breath felt shallow. My hands fidgeted, fixing my sleeve, then undoing the fix. I reached the door. Apartment 4B. My hand hovered, knocked once. And then it opened. She didn't say a word. Didn't smile. Didn't hesitate. She just looked at me. Her hair was down, slightly curled like it had dried that way naturally. She wore silk cream-colored, soft, clinging but not tight. It caught the candlelight and moved like water when she shifted. Behind her, the room was dim, warm. Dozens of small flames flickered in quiet corners on bookshelves, the coffee table, along the windowsill. The scent was faint but intoxicating jasmine, maybe. Or something softer. Then I saw her. The other woman. She was seated near the window, legs crossed, fingers slowly tracing the rim of a wine glass. Her nails were dark, her expression unreadable. But her eyes, they met mine like she already knew me. Not from photos, not from gossip, but from something deeper. Like she'd been told stories of who I used to be, who my wife once loved. And now she was here to see if any of that was still true. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me with a quiet click. My wife moved with purpose, slow, steady, unhurried. She didn't rush to explain. Didn't fill the space with apologies or justifications. She didn't need to. Because the way she looked at me like I was both a stranger and someone she still chose told me more than words ever could. She stepped closer, her bare feet brushing the wood floor. Her eyes never left mine. Then, without saying a word, she reached for my hand. Not to pull me, not to claim me, just to lift it gently, reverently, and place it on her chest. Right over her heartbeat. It was steady, strong, not racing, not afraid. It was the heartbeat of someone who had nothing left to prove. And in that stillness, in that skin-on-skin contact, I realized this wasn't about control. It wasn't about punishment. It wasn't even about betrayal anymore. It was about presence. About choosing to be here with her, for her, in this moment she'd claimed as her own. The other woman stood up slowly. She moved toward us with a grace that felt almost surreal. Not seductive. Intentional. Every step was an invitation. Not a demand. She paused beside my wife, the two of them close, but not touching like planets in perfect orbit. And then she looked at her. Not me. And my wife nodded. Just once. There was trust in that exchange. A trust one hadn't earned, but was being given one last chance to honor. I didn't speak. Couldn't. Because everything happening around me wasn't loud or lustful. It was sacred. It was about being seen. Fully. Finally. Not just the parts we show when things are easy, but the parts we hide when we're tired, lost, lonely. And now somehow, those pieces were all being laid bare. Not to be judged, but to be understood. To be loved again differently. More honestly. I wasn't sure what would come next. And, for the first time in a long time, I didn't need to know. Because here, in this candlelit room, surrounded by silence that spoke volumes, with her heartbeat under my palm, I felt it. A door opening. Not behind us, but ahead. And this time, I walked through it with my eyes open. There was a silence I didn't dare break. Not out of fear, but reverence. Like if I spoke too soon, the moment would vanish. My hand was still against her chest, feeling the rhythm of her heart strong and certain, like she was no longer asking for permission to be who she was. She leaned in, forehead brushing mine, eyes not quite closed. And in that breath between us, I remembered her laugh. The real one. The one she used to have when we first met, before life crowded in with bills and schedules and silent dinners. It flickered in her for a second, and I realized I hadn't just forgotten to listen. I'd forgotten to see her. The woman beside her. She stepped closer. Not intruding. Not performing. Just joining. As if she'd been invited not into our marriage, but into a moment of truth neither of us could reach alone. Her presence was steady. Warm. Grounded. She touched my wife's shoulder, soft, familiar, like they'd shared something I hadn't earned the right to know yet. And maybe never would. And then her hand found mine. Not possessive. Not guiding. Just with me. Matching my stillness. Matching my breath. Three of us, standing in the flickering half-light, not tangled but aligned. And for the first time, I didn't feel like something was being taken from me. I felt like something was being given back. She, the woman I married, looked up at me, eyes wet but not broken. She was opening. Not to me. Not just yet. To herself. And I saw it, the version of her I'd stopped making space for. The woman who used to dance in the kitchen barefoot at midnight. The one who read poetry to herself in the bathtub and hummed while folding laundry like the melody meant something. That woman, the real her, was back. And she was holding this moment with both hands. Guarded but generous. Afraid but brave enough to stay. I watched as her fingers traced the side of the other woman's neck, gentle, reverent. There was no script. No agenda. Just unfolding. And I didn't move. I let it all wash over me. The disbelief. The aching curiosity. The humility of seeing your partner find something you never knew they needed. And still wanting to be part of it. My wife looked at me again, this time differently. She stepped closer, placing her hand on the side of my face, thumb brushing just beneath my eye like she was wiping away a thought I couldn't say out loud. And then, in the softest voice, she said, "This isn't about sex." I nodded. I know. It's about being known again. Not through duty. Not through routine. But through choice. Her lips didn't move again. But everything she needed to say came through her eyes. She was choosing herself. And somehow, choosing me too if I could meet her here. We all sat down. No one rushed. No one claimed space they hadn't been offered. There was touching. But not the kind you expect. Hands that lingered on shoulders. Fingers that found wrists, tracing quiet pulses. Lips that pressed into skin not to claim, but to comfort. It wasn't about her body. It was about the parts of her I'd forgotten how to hold. Her defiance. Her softness. Her hunger to feel like more than a role someone loved once and forgot how to see again. And me? I surrendered. Not out of weakness. But because I realized I'd been holding on to an idea of us that was too small for who she was becoming. And the third woman? She never tried to be between us. She was beside us. A witness. A catalyst. A mirror. And when I looked into her eyes, I didn't see temptation. I saw reflection. Of what we used to be. Of what we could still become. And in that room, candles flickering, hearts laid bare, silence pulsing with every inhale. I knew. This wasn't the end of something broken. It was the beginning of something honest. We didn't speak much on the drive home. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything had already been said without words. The sky outside was starting to shift, just barely. That deep blue before dawn, like even the world wasn't sure whether to hold the night a little longer or let the morning in. She sat next to me, her head turned toward the window, hair loose, lips parted in a half-thought. And I kept glancing at her like I was seeing something fragile and powerful all at once. Not because she'd broken anything, but because something had finally been unbroken. When we got home, she didn't go to the bathroom. Didn't scroll her phone or sigh or peel away from me like usual. She walked straight to our bedroom. Our bed. The same bed that once felt too big between us. Felt just right now. She pulled the covers back, sat on the edge, and waited. Not for me to ask questions. Not for permission. Just waited like she knew I'd follow. And I did. I sat beside her, close enough to feel the warmth from her skin, still humming from the night, but far enough to let her choose. She leaned in. Not with drama. Not with fire. Just gently. Her head on my shoulder. Her hand over mine. The window was cracked open. I could hear a bird somewhere in the dark. Could smell the faintest trace of her perfume, now mixed with candle smoke and something else I couldn't name. She exhaled into the hush and whispered, "Now you know what I mean. When I say I want to be wanted." And God, that hit me. Not because I'd never heard her say those words before. She had. In her own way. 1,000 times. In the way she'd pause after asking how I was and wait for me to ask back. In the way she wore that red blouse on Wednesdays and I stopped noticing. in the way she stood next to me in a room full of people, and I forgot to reach for her hand. She wanted to be wanted. Not out of habit, not obligation, but from hunger, from memory, from choice. And now I understood. I turned to her slowly and rested my hand on the side of her face. And I said the only thing that felt true in that moment. Thank you. Just that. Not for the night. Not for the permission. But for not giving up before I caught up to her. She nodded, barely. And then I did something I hadn't done in a long time, something so simple it felt sacred. I held her. Held her without reason, without goal, without fixing. Held her because I saw her again, and not the version I built from memory or need. The real her, the new her, the one who demanded space and fire and softness all at once. I didn't feel small beside her. I felt present. And that's the thing, isn't it? This was never about permission. It was never about being allowed to cross some line or open some door. It was about presence. Showing up. Staying when it got uncomfortable. Listening even when the words scared you. Touching without claiming. Seeing without owning. That night what we shared, what we risked, what we rebuilt, it didn't fix everything. It wasn't magic. But it was real. And sometimes, that's the most erotic thing there is. To be real. To be raw. To be known. And in that quiet after everything, with her body warm against mine, her breath sinking to mine like it used to in the beginning, I finally stopped wondering what I missed. Because I was there. And so was she. You know, sometimes it takes losing control. Completely. To remember what it feels like to choose. To choose presence over performance. Curiosity over comfort. And honesty even when it shakes the ground beneath your feet. That night didn't fix our marriage. It didn't undo the silences or the years we'd spent walking past each other like ghosts. But it did something more honest than fixing. It revealed. It revealed the parts of her that had been buried under laundry and compromise. The parts of me that had forgotten how to touch without expecting. How to listen without guarding. How to want not just out of routine, but out of recognition. She wasn't asking me to be someone else. She was asking me to see her again. Not the wife. Not the mother. Not the woman who fit beside me in a photograph. But the woman who still wanted to be wanted. Who still had edges I hadn't explored. Who still carried fantasies she'd folded up and hidden because she thought love meant never making waves. And me? I realized I'd loved her, but I hadn't chosen her in a long time. Not like that. Not with presence. Not with surrender. And maybe that's the quiet truth in so many relationships. We think love is a destination. But really it's a decision. One you make again, and again, and again. Even when it's messy. Even when it hurts. Even when it leads you somewhere you didn't expect to go. So let me ask you something. Have you ever buried a part of yourself for love? Or rediscovered it when you least expected? Tell me in the comments. I read every word because stories like this, they're not just mine. They belong to all of us. And if this one stirred something in you, something raw or real or a little bit forgotten, subscribe to Sheila Hart Tales. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We feel them. Together. Always.